Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we unpack complex information and give you those aha moments. Today we're diving into a market that might just surprise you with its sheer scale and, well, surprisingly consistent growth. Chances are you've got some of these supplies tucked away somewhere, or you definitely remember them from, school art class. We're talking about the global watercolor market. We've tapped into some exclusive market intelligence from cognitive market research, looking at concrete figures from 2021, projections for 2025, and a long-range forecast all the way out to 2033. And that comes complete with compound annual growth rates, or KGRs, which is basically the average annual growth over time. Our mission for you today, to explore the surprising vibrancy and steady expansion of this creative industry and really understand what's driving it.
Yeah, and what's truly fascinating here is how this, seemingly simple art supply market actually reflects much broader global trends. Things like creativity, education, even economic development. We're not just going to list numbers. We'll really dig into the underlying forces, making this a quiet but honestly surprisingly powerful part of the global economy.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
Let's unpack this with the big picture first.
Yeah.
Globally, the watercolor market was valued at, nearly $2.5 billion back in 2021. And it's definitely not just holding steady. It's projected to reach almost $2.9 billion by 2025 and then really stretch out to nearly $4 billion by 2033. That's a remarkably consistent path, isn't it?
It absolutely is. That represents a global average annual growth rate of just over 4%, 4.115% to be exact. And this steady expansion, it tells us a really compelling story. It's about growing global demand, especially from, hobbyists who are maybe rediscovering creative outlets, a huge number of students learning new skills, and of course, professional artists who are always pushing boundaries. It really speaks to that sort of universal human desire for creative expression. Plus, you've got increasing accessibility to quality art supplies and educational opportunities all around the world.
Right. So what does this mean for you listening? It's a clear signal, I think, that even in our super digital world, the appeal of tangible, hands-on creative stuff is stronger than ever. And it represents a significant, really thriving economic sector. Okay, now let's narrow our focus a bit and maybe paint a regional picture, if you will. North America made up a pretty big chunk of this market. We're talking over $700 million in 2021, and it's set to grow to well over $1 billion by 2033. That's with an annual growth rate of about 3.5%. Within North America, the U.S. is still a market leader, projected to hit nearly $870 million by 2033. But here's something interesting. Canada actually shows even faster growth.
Oh, really?
Yeah, with an annual rate of over 4.2%, expected to reach almost $117.5 million by 2033. And Mexico also sees pretty healthy growth, just under 3.7% annually.
Okay, so if we connect that back to the bigger picture, North America's strong figures, they really suggest a mature market, right? So that likely means well-established distribution, a strong cultural focus on art education, think about community classes, online tutorials, all that.
Sure, yeah.
And just a booming leisure activity segment. Now, that's a slightly higher growth in Canada compared to the U.S. That is a fascinating detail. It could point to maybe different demographic shifts or perhaps stronger grassroots art movements really gaining traction there. Hard to say for sure, but interesting.
Definitely. Okay, moving across the Atlantic then, the European market recorded over $520 million in 2021. That's projected to increase to almost $800 million by 2033, growing at an average of about 3.7% per year. Germany really stands out here, though, a stronger growth rate, over 4.3% annually, aiming for over $173 million by 2033. The UK is also strong, looking at over $128 million. But Russia shows more modest growth, just under 2.4% annually.
Right, and this raises an important question, doesn't it? What factors might be behind Germany's stronger performance compared to other European nations? Or, conversely, why is Russia's growth more modest?
Yeah.
Well, one hypothesis could be Germany's, strong tradition of art education, maybe strong government support for cultural programs.
That makes sense.
Whereas Russia's slightly slower pace, maybe it's influenced by different consumer priorities or even just the availability and cost of imported art supplies. These regional differences, they really highlight that complex mix of culture, economics, and policy at play.
Absolutely. Okay, now here's where it gets really interesting, I think. Asia Pacific. This region is showing incredibly robust expansion, soaring from just over $900 million in 2021 to a projected $1.57 billion by 2033. That's an eye-popping annual growth rate of over 4.7%.
Yeah.
This region is truly leading the charge globally. And within Asia-Pacific, China dominates in size, growing from over $271 million in 2021 to nearly $482.5 million by 2033. That's an annual growth near 5%. But the real star here, the growth rate star, is India. It boasts the highest growth in the entire region, frankly, globally.
Get out.
Seriously, surging from over $106 million in 2021 to almost $208 million by 2033. That's a remarkable annual rate of over 5.7%. And we also see Southeast Asia showing really strong promise, too, with annual growth over 5.2%.
Okay, what's genuinely fascinating about Asia-Pacific is just the sheer dynamism. India's exceptional growth rate. It's not just about rising incomes, though obviously that's part of it.
Sure.
It points to rapidly expanding consumer bases, yes, but maybe more specifically, a real blossoming of artistic interest. Could be driven by things like, the rise of online art communities.
Social media, tutorials.
Exactly. YouTube tutorials making art accessible to millions, maybe even government initiatives promoting cultural arts. It's complex. This region isn't just growing, it's really transforming, becoming a true powerhouse for future market expansion. It's a great example of how, maybe counterintuitively, digital trends can actually fuel demand for tangible products.
That's a great point. Okay, let's complete our global canvas tour with the emerging markets. South America, their market is projected to reach over $280 million by 2033, with a healthy annual growth rate of nearly 4.4%. Brazil's leading the way there. Argentina and Chile also showing encouraging growth, just under 4.9% and 4.6% annually, respectively. Pretty solid. Then the Middle East market, set to reach over $156 million by 2033, growing at about 4.35% annually. The UAE and Turkey showing notable growth there, over 4.6%. And finally, Africa. The market there is expected to reach almost $118.3 million by 2033, with South Africa leading the continent at over $51 million.
Right. And if we connect this back, these regions, while, maybe smaller in absolute dollar terms right now, they are demonstrating significant percentage growth. And that strongly suggests increasing access to and adoption of artistic supplies as these economies develop and consumer interests broaden. They're not just following trends. They are actively shaping new creative landscapes in their own right. These are definitely key areas to watch for sustained, long-term market expansion.
Okay, so boiling it all down, what's the ultimate takeaway for you listening to all these numbers? We've seen that the global watercolor market is, it's definitely not some niche, stagnant little corner of the economy. Not at all. It's a thriving, multi-billion-dollar industry that's set for continued and pretty significant growth, really, across the board.
Yeah, the key insights are, I think, crystal clear. We're witnessing strong, sustained growth pretty much everywhere. And it isn't just random. It seems largely fueled by, the increasing popularity of creative expression, maybe as a form of well-being.
Right, mindfulness and all that.
Exactly. Plus the expanding use of art in schools worldwide and just growing access to a wider variety of artistic supplies for everybody. It's a market that really thrives on those vibrant regional dynamics and kind of an expanding global creative community.
It is particularly fascinating, I have to say, seeing countries like India leading with such remarkable growth. It really shows us where the future demand for these kinds of tools might be strongest. It genuinely underscores how global creativity isn't just, ticking along. It's really on a significant and quite exciting upswing.
Well, that was a truly colorful deep dive into the world of watercolors. Who knew art supplies could paint such a compelling economic picture? It certainly pushes back against the idea that, traditional hobbies are fading away.
It really just goes to show you, doesn't it? Every industry, no matter how specific or maybe old school it seems, is part of that larger global tapestry of evolving trends and, fundamental human interests. Sometimes the quietest shifts are actually the most powerful ones. That's a great way to put it. And that brings us to our provocative thought for you today. Given this impressive and, frankly, consistent growth in watercolors, a tangible traditional art form, what other seemingly small or classic industries do you think might be quietly experiencing similar surprising surges globally? Perhaps fueled by, a renewed interest in hands-on skills or mindfulness, or just that simple desire for creative offline pursuits, something to maybe mull over until our next deep dive.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to really get under the surface of complex topics. Today, we're exploring the global watercolor market. It's a surprisingly lively space where creativity, business, and innovation all kind of mix together. And this deep dive is based on some really comprehensive insights from cognitive market research. Our goal today, to unpack what's going on in this market. What's driving the momentum, the hurdles it faces, and some of the, frankly, exciting innovations pushing it forward. It's not just paint, it's art, therapy, tech, sustainability. It's fascinating. Okay, let's unpack this then. We live in such a digital world, screens everywhere. So what's actually behind this wave of enthusiasm for watercolor? It feels like it suddenly popped up a lot more.
It really has. And I think what's quite revealing is how the nature of watercolor itself plays into it. It's quite forgiving for beginners, relatively easy to set up, and there's that tactile satisfaction. For many adults, it's becoming almost an antidote to all that screen time, this sort of tangible, therapeutic, creative outlet.
An antidote to screens.
Yeah, and that's really fueling a big increase in artistic hobbyists.
That's a really interesting way to put it, the antidote idea. It makes me think, though, about the online side. Are things like social media, those art challenges you see, tutorials, are they also playing a big part in this?
Oh, absolutely. You've nailed a critical point there.
Because I see tons of it online, attracting everyone from total beginners to, experienced painters.
Exactly. Those digital platforms, they're huge amplifiers. They don't just show off the art. They build communities, offer endless ideas, and crucially, provide these super accessible tutorials. It really democratizes learning the skill.
Right.
And that's pushed watercolor way beyond just professional studios. Now we're seeing it pop up in homes, classrooms, even like wellness centers. It shows just how broad the appeal has become.
Okay, I get that. That wider reach makes sense. So with all these new people getting interested, these online groups, that must be driving demand for certain types of watercolor products, right? Are people just grabbing the basic starter kits, or is there something more going on with demand?
That's a great question because maybe counterintuitively with the hobbyist boom, we're actually seeing a significant rise in demand for educational and professional grade sets.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, schools, universities, art academies, they're putting more emphasis on traditional painting techniques again. And for that, they want, the good stuff.
Yeah.
Highly pigmented, light, fast paints so the student work lasts and looks good. And it's not just institutions. Professional artists are also looking for those really well-curated sets, better brushes, the right paper, premium pigments, and that consistent demand for quality. It drives repeat buys from schools and pros, which gives the market a nice, stable revenue base long term.
Okay, so there's this demand for quality.
Yeah.
But how are people actually getting these supplies, especially with so many discovering watercolor online?
Yep.
How's e-commerce fitting in? Is it changing who sells what?
Oh, e-commerce is huge. A
Okay.
total game changer. But maybe the really interesting part isn't just the convenience. It's how online selling has, democratized access in a different way. It's let loads of these indie brands pop up.
Like the small batch pigment makers.
Exactly. Like artisans making unique colors in their studios. They can now skip the traditional gatekeepers, find their niche audience anywhere in the world. It's really shaking up who holds the power in the market.
I see.
So consumers suddenly have this incredible choice. Online kits, brushes, papers, way more than a typical art store could ever stock. And another thing that's taking off online are those bundled kits, the ones with instructions, maybe video links.
Right, like an all-in-one starting package.
Precisely. They make watercolor feel much less daunting, more engaging for beginners no matter their age. They get everything curated, often by artists they follow online, ready to go.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Of course, no market is without its challenges, and I imagine watercolor has its share. With all this growth, what are some of the, let's say, headwinds? What difficulties is the market facing?
Well, the main restraint, the biggest one we identified, is probably cost, especially for the premium stuff. Top quality watercolors, good brushes, proper paper, it adds up.
Yeah.
That price point can definitely put off more casual users or people just starting out who aren't sure if they'll stick with it.
Right, the initial investment.
Exactly. And in places where people are more price sensitive, they'll naturally lean towards the student grade or even generic options, which is fine. But it can mean they don't get the best experience and maybe don't stick with it as long. That lowers the lifetime value for businesses. Then there's another issue, kind of specific to watercolor, storage and shelf life.
Oh, how so?
Well, watercolors, especially if they use natural binders or pigments, can be susceptible to spoilage. If they're not sealed right or stored somewhere too humid,
I can go bad.
yeah, or the quality degrades. Exposure to light, air, contaminants, it can mess with the pigment integrity. And that leads to unhappy customers, erodes trust in a brand. It's a real practical challenge.
That's a tricky one. And what about competition? I guess it's not just about price or storage. Are other art forms, maybe digital ones, competing for attention?
Absolutely. Fierce competition.
Yeah.
You've got digital painting, obviously, which is huge, but also things like acrylics, alcohol inks. These often offer faster drying times, or you can use them on more surfaces. That really appeals to, say, younger creators, people who are maybe more tech savvy and value convenience and versatility.
The immediacy factor.
Right. And digital tools offer things like undo buttons, infinite colors,
Yeah.
very tempting features. It puts pressure on traditional media like watercolor.
Yeah.
You really need to keep adapting, keep innovating to stay relevant and capture people's imagination.
Okay, so it's definitely not all smooth sailing, cost barriers, shelf life issues, digital rivals, some real modern challenges. But what's fascinating is how the market seems to be responding. It's not just sitting back, it's innovating, right? Sometimes in quite surprising ways. What are some of those exciting trends you're seeing?
Yeah, there's some really interesting stuff happening. One big one is the rise of eco-conscious and vegan watercolors.
Ah, okay, sustainability.
Exactly. Brands are bringing out non-toxic plant-based pigments. They're using recyclable packaging, making sure things are cruelty-free. And that really strikes a chord with consumers who care about the environment.
Yeah.
It's carving out a whole new sustainable niche, appealing to a different set of values. Then, another trend, quite clever actually, is this demand for personalized palettes.
Personalized, how does that work?
Well, artists are liking these modular pans, where you can swap pigments in and out, refill them easily. And some brands are offering online tools, configurators, color matching things so you can design your own perfect travel kit, for instance.
Oh, that's smart.
It is. It boosts the usability, lets artists get
Mhm.
exactly what they need, and builds loyalty because it's their custom set.
Blending customization and maybe even sustainability if you're refilling pans. Okay, nice. What about bridging that gap we talked about between the traditional art form and, well, modern tech, especially for learners?
Yes, and this is a really neat fusion, I think. We're seeing the emergence of what you might call digitally integrated educational kits.
How does that work? Like QR codes on the box.
Exactly that. Putting QR codes, links to mobile apps, video tutorials right into the physical paint set. It brilliantly bridges that gap between learning traditional techniques and how people, especially younger people, learn today.
Right, blending the physical and digital.
Yeah. These sort of hybrid products are super appealing to beginners and younger folks. They get the freedom to learn their own way at their own pace, but still get that, tactile satisfaction of actually using paint. It's a great mix, making art more accessible than ever.
So it's been quite a journey through this global watercolor market. It's clearly way more dynamic than just, tubes of paint on a shelf. It really shows how creativity and commerce can adapt and evolve, even when facing things like digital disruption.
It absolutely does. The market's definitely evolving, and at a pretty steady clip. It's being pushed by, well, growing creative expression, as we said, but also solid investment from institutions, these new digital learning tools, and that big shift towards eco-friendly products. Now, it obviously still has to figure out the challenges, pricing, preservation, competing tech, but overall, the sector keeps finding ways to inspire new people and kind of transform how we engage with art. It proves traditional mediums still have a really vibrant future.
Which leaves us with a thought to mull over. Given this increasing blend, this fusion of traditional art like watercolor with digital tools, with personalized experiences, how might the actual fundamental essence of creating art be redefined for the next generation of artists and hobbyists? What will making art even mean to them?